Welcome to Therapy, Tech, and Takeout, where humor meets healing with bite-sized chunks of wisdom and techie tips. Hi,
Hi.
Jackie.
Hi, Toni. How are you doing today?
I'm
I,
good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm Jackie Toll, one of your co-hosts. I'm a tech entrepreneur and mom and low rent stand-up comedian. And I'm joined by my other illustrious co-host, Toni.
Hi, I'm Toni Teixeira. I'm a therapist, entrepreneur, ethics nerd, and recovering overthinker. And I'm wondering, Jackie, what are you vibing this week?
I am vibing getting local. Um,
Ooh.
yeah, I've always been such like a traveler for work or for fun or all of those things, and I'm getting into some projects that are really local. And I actually went to a really old Florida like restaurant that was like in the middle of a residential neighborhood the other day that I had never heard of before. So I'm just really enjoying kind of like digging into the community. How about you?
Oh wow, that's like really super cool. I love that little like finding little dives. That's
Yeah, it's
that's like
fun.
a lot of fun little hole in the walls. I am yeah, it's been kind of a mixed bag for me this week. I just got back from Iceland, which was like super fun and had like an awesome time there. So I feel like I'm just coming kind of down on that high of that. So, given who I am, what did I do? I put myself under like a lot of stress coming back from a wonderful vacation. And this week I've been working on a professional will for my business
Oh,
and really
wow.
thinking about like when I die, how do I want my clients to find that out? And then what happens to their records? And so I really had to dig deep into that. So I've been kind of in a couple different places this week from the high of the vacation and then like really thinking about the future. But it's all good. I ran through the
Yeah.
gamut of emotions and now I feel like, okay, now that's done. I don't have to think about it or like worry about it.
Right.
And,
There's not
and
that worry.
yeah, it really feels good to know that like I planned for my clients and they'll know that just how much I really care about them and that I went ahead and I did this and I wanted to make sure that they knew. There was like an article about like what happens to clients and how they feel when their therapists disappear.
Yeah.
Just came out over the weekend. So
Oh,
yeah,
that's cool. It's something I wouldn't have thought of not being in the space, but like it makes a ton of sense, like for sure.
yeah, yeah,
And it is like any of that work it's just like doing it for your will, doing it for your, for your personal stuff, doing it for your business, doing the Swedish death cleaning, any of that stuff. It like definitely is, a real time to go inward for sure. And like
yeah.
have some things and then really do feel that relief of like, oh, I'm not leaving a mess. So, Toni, what are we talking about this week?
We are talking about a topic that's near and dear to my heart because it has to do, of course, with mental health, but also technology and how it's affecting teenagers. And kids and the developing brain. And I think that there is a lot of stuff out there. Like there's a lot of articles, podcasts, videos, documentaries, which you turned me on to one of them about this topic, and I think it's super important. I don't know how you feel about it because like the kids that are being raised right now, this is like what the future looks like how how they show up in the world and what happens to them now is wiring their experience and their nervous system for everything that's going on in the future. So it kind of all started, Jackie, as I ran past an article. I think it was a community in Texas that's banning cell phones in school. So it kind of started there and like spread out. And I initially thought, wow, that's a really good idea. Like ban those cell phones in school. Kids can't, look at their phones. So they will socialize more and they'll be more present in the classroom. What do you think about that?
I really like the idea, I think the the perspective of a parent, like I can also understand the perspective of a parent though, like not wanting your kid not to have their phone because God forbid, what if something horrible happens?
Hmm.
Um, and it's like I feel like it's that like mix between like the super low possibility thing, but like not wanting to like be in the situation where you wouldn't be able to contact your kid. Versus, the um what's probably better, like you said, like that forced disconnect time. Like I think that that's important, for kids. And I think that my kids went to schools where they weren't allowed to have their cell phones during
Hmm.
the day, and I think it's interesting. I think it's important that they learn that. But then I also I think the thing that stuck out to me from this was like, what are the questions or the conversations we should be having? Like having the phone, having any sort of disruption in school like that, like a computer, right? Like if you don't have your phone but you have your computer, isn't that almost the same thing? And so are we saying like no technology? Maybe my kid, like the kids my kid school my kids went to through middle school had like very little technology in the classrooms.
Yeah,
Um,
I think it definitely spreads out from there. I mean, like this is kind of how I think I ended up down the rabbit hole, right? Because then I started thinking about that too. Like kids need to be safe in school. We worry about that as parents. And then same as you. Then what happens with technology? In some ways it's useful in school. Um, if we're banning cell phones, though, we're not going to let kids look up stuff on their Chromebooks or their laptops or whatever. But is that really, like you said, is that really so different than having your cell phone because you're still kind of connected to the outside world? And then my question to you, though, is like the banning the cell phones in school. The real reason that they're doing that is like, what are kids connecting to?
right.
What are they looking at, and how is that affecting who they are and how they kind of their personalities and how they develop. um and sometimes that can lead to mood disorders too, mental health
For sure.
issues. Yeah.
And
Hmm.
like scare, the bullying and and the lack of, even if you're looking at what your kid's looking at, like your inability as like, an old person to recognize what all the emojis mean in those contexts, in those spaces, something that might mean one thing in one space means something completely different. It's almost like there's a whole other vernacular, and
Hmm.
stuff. And so, even if you were trying to be the most diligent you possibly could, regulation doesn't seem like the sort of be all end all solution to the problem, right? It feels like something where there needs to be more of a collaboration. I think in schools too, like bringing kids into the conversation, and I think what I saw from that show, social studies that I had mentioned, was that like kids desperately want some help setting boundaries and want some guidance on, what's safe and what's not safe. And I think parents and educators and stuff need to also understand like where the pushback is coming from kids and why that's happening and how can you overcome that, as opposed to just like sort of a brute force tactic. I think that's more effective.
Yeah, they're just like taking it away from them instead
Yeah.
of like really taking
Like,
a
hey,
look at how to work together.
right,
Yeah.
like we're gonna, yeah, decide, like maybe it is that like there are no cell phones in the classroom and maybe that is like a rule, but like and it's for everybody's good and stuff. But then like when like having conversations about like when are cell phones good to have, or like what happens if I need to get to my phone? Maybe they're kept in a
Hmm.
place where everybody can see them, and if they needed to run for them, they could get them, or you know what I mean? Like like deal with some of those other issues that are coming, around. I think it's a security blanket for a lot of kids. To like to be that connected, right? Like not in a healthy way necessarily, or even, but like
Hmm.
to forcefully take it away can put them into I would imagine a state where maybe they're not going to be primed for learning, if they're not brought into that conversation.
Hmm. Like it might create more anxiety not to have a cell
Yeah,
phone available to them. Yeah, I guess I could see that. I could see that how that could be an issue. I think what I loved about, I think it was Lauren Greenfield though who mentioned it, and she did this study and it became this documentary where they went into kids' phones to see what they were like. The kids gave them permission and like they
Yeah.
were able to check and see like what it is they're doing on social media and like really have these conversations about what it is they're doing and what it means to them and what the problems are that are out there for kids today. And she really talked about this like over protection in the real world of our kids and the under protection in the technology area. Like we have this false sense of our kids are safe because they're home and they're upstairs on their phone or on their computer, because if they're on the playground, then we don't know what's going to happen. And I think that that's really the first thing to tackle is like the parents' mentality about what happens when kids connect and where they can go, you
Yeah.
know,
And I
like,
think that the false um the false comfort of thinking that you have something also, right? Like these kids had said to, the producers or whatever, sure, you can look on my phone and have everything and whatever, and they were still sneaking around and like,
yeah,
so like I think if you as a parent think that you've put something in place that's like the be all end all that your kids aren't going to get around those things, like
yeah,
they can, and I think to your point it's like it's the having that mindset of what really safety looks like in this device or any, like I said before, like we were saying before, like even a video game console, right? Like you people can get bullied and radicalized and whatnot, like through almost any place where you're connecting to other people, be it in person or not, but that kids are this commodity, this super valued commodity to these companies that are, set up to like exploit their attention. And, understanding that as a parent and seeing that as a real danger, I think is a real important place for people to get their heads around. I think the decision I made around giving my kids a phone, the decision points I had kind of were like, can they keep up with it? And like, are they not going to break it constantly? And then it was like, okay, then they can have a phone, right? Like I really I didn't think about it a lot more
hmm
in depth than that at the time.
yeah,
And I think we need to be having a lot more deep thoughts around making like these types of decisions of when to integrate technology and how to talk to our kids about it.
yeah, yeah. There's not enough research that's really out there to know what the longevity is of like growing up around screens because it historically like it's kind of new. It's like maybe the last generation, right? Not the last generation, or like the most recent generation, I should say, going forward, who, the babies in the strollers who have the iPads.
Oh
When
yeah.
you and I had kids, where kids didn't have that, we just didn't have that available. So they had like the little bars with the toys. So what we don't really know what the effects are going to be. It's not really straightforward. One of the things that I thought was interesting, there was another article, uh, this book called The Anxious Generation that looked
Yeah.
at adolescence and how technology affected them growing up. And they said, well, they kind of surveyed girls and found that depression is up and it might be connected to phones and screens. And however, doctors are starting to screen for depression. So,
Right. But now they're
are we getting
asking. Yeah.
right? We're asking. So we might be getting more of it because people are asking and there's an opportunity to say how you feel. But at the same time, I mean, I think that especially given social media, there's a toxic environment of this comparison culture on social media that kids have that in their pocket, like they have toxicity in their pocket that tells them they should be comparing themselves to other people all the
Yeah.
time, and they're never going to live up to it, never
Yeah.
ever ever.
No. And it's and the other places it can take them too, right? like that's like the gateway. The first place is just like you're not good enough, you're missing out. And then the next step is, and here's all the ways you can fix that, you know,
The things you can buy.
fix, yeah, the
Yeah,
things you can buy or like the bad habits you can, here's how to, the pro Ana stuff for eating disorders. I mean, it's really
yeah,
disturbing, right? Like, I mean, those are places that can have like bring something up that is a lifetime issue for people. Um, so it's scary for
right.
sure. And I think they know there's something to be afraid of, but then maybe it's overwhelming too. Like I think these are difficult conversations to have in the midst of, um,
Mhm.
everything that's going on in that adolescent, like teen, preteen stage, but it's so important.
Well, what do you think parents aren't having these conversations with their kids? Do you think that parents really don't know? Are they still stuck in that my kid is protected because they're home stage? Is it because we have our head in the sand? We're just too busy? What do you think's really going on? Why are we not having conversations with kids around this?
I wonder how much of it is just like everything is overwhelming all the time. Sometimes, when you're in the midst of work and as a parent, like that feeling of like it's too big and I can't handle it, perhaps, I think. And then I also think if you recognize it in yourself and you don't have a solution for it, you might not feel like you have any tools to really have a conversation, with your kids about it, right? If
Grown-ups are struggling with this
Right.
and
Like
they
if
don't
you
know
know
how to
this is
handle it.
right, if you're sitting and coping with your day by scrolling on your phone and stuff, and that's like the behavior you're modeling to your kids, and then you're going, well, this isn't good. Like, I think a lot of people recognize that's just not going to be even a useful or, isn't super helpful. And maybe they just don't have the tools or aren't ready to address it, for
Yeah.
themselves too, right? Like
Yeah.
that could be really hard.
I was so intrigued by the fact that in China, kids only get 2 hours of TikTok and then they're done.
Right.
And they're not allowed to watch any more than 2 hours a day. And then they have to go like do their homework or, do something else. And that was like really a curiosity to me.
Yeah.
We live in an individualistic society and, freedom of choice and all of that. But isn't that really interesting that there are guardrails
Yeah.
up there for the amount you're going to consume? Still doesn't help with the what you're going to consume. You could eat, junk food for 2 hours a day. If somebody told you, oh, Jackie, you can
Right.
only eat for 2 hours today, right? Yeah, that would be great. But you could eat
I've
junk
tried
food,
those diets, I think, at some point in my life. Right? They
intermittent
never
fasting.
work, right? Yeah.
Yeah, I
But
would
yeah,
eat
no, I
chocolate
think
for 2 hours.
I know, straight. Mainline the chocolate. But I think that yeah, the like helping kids find the things that help them break that cycle too. I think what you and I saw when we did our digital cleanse and stuff,
Hmm.
like if you consciously or like, hey, we're gonna try a week where we just take pauses. Like it doesn't have to be the most painful thing, but like we're gonna have, you know, a meal or we're gonna watch a TV show or we're gonna play a game or something where we all put our phones down and we're just, present and or encourage them. I think the other thing too is like parents got so caught up in the like I'm solely responsible for like driving my kid to 900 out like extracurricular activities and they have like all the things you try to do to get your kids involved in things that aren't their phones then become like these giant projects and full-time jobs for parents and so there's not a lot of like gas left in the tank to do any of these
Yeah.
other things and so I think also it is that like being able to really say like what's more important and
Hmm.
paring down to some, and reflecting that, and how you interact.
Yeah. So, like, if we have a conversation about that, awareness is important. I think that that's what I hear you saying. And Lauren Greenfield talks about that too, in the interview she did on the Daily Show. And she also talked about something that's near and dear to my heart, which is media literacy. And I think I've mentioned that before, that I think being good consumers of media and and what's out there, and having critical thinking skills, which by the way kids don't have yet because the prefrontal cortex is not completely formed when you're 12 or 13 years old, right? So they can't really stop themselves. There's no guardrails
Yeah.
um, internally. So awareness, media literacy, but what responsibility do tech companies have? What because I was just talking about, right, like in China they have 2 hours a day and that's it. Do we just make this something that parents have to be in charge of? Should we be fighting for and like advocating for tech companies to do more? Because their algorithms really kind of suck kids right in.
Yeah.
And yeah, and like what are they feeding kids?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I think that there are like if it's something that triggers addictive behavior, and I think, like in enough of the population, like it needs to be something that we're actively, regulating children's access to, in my opinion. Like I think to your point, they don't have the capacity to make those decisions, necessarily. And I've seen studies, I couldn't put my finger on them now, but like about how those types of things early in life really do rewire the brain, right? And the brain's development. And so, I think it's on it, you have to take it at like the highest level, because like we don't trust just parents to figure out whether their kids should smoke or not, right? Like it's not like a parent's choice thing, right? It's a
right.
societally we all say kids shouldn't smoke. And so
Hmm.
I think
Or
that
drink alcohol,
right, or
right?
drink alcohol. Like, I mean, there's, a long
Yeah,
list, gamble, right, of things that we say,
yeah,
you're not ready yet for this. And so I think that there's, tech falls into that, and you know,
it's getting overlooked though.
it
Because yeah,
is.
I agree with
Well,
you. I think it
that's
falls into that, but nobody says, "Oh yeah, if this is like cigarettes, this is addicting. You can scroll nonstop. There's no stop button. There's no pause. You can do it endlessly. It's like having a bottle of booze that has no bottom."
right. Yeah.
Hmm.
That you're supplying for your kid, right? You're paying for it, and it's happening in your house. Um, and yeah, there does need to be, and I think part of it is, yeah, people get becoming aware, and then the school I think is a really good place, right, where hopefully we can have some of these conversations. I mean, not that teachers need another thing on their plate, but I think over time we're going to see teachers' interactions shift to be more about like teaching people how to become people versus, we will be able to leverage tools and technology, I think, to teach people more of the skill side. Um, and like, let's get people involved in helping people be better people.
Yeah,
I think that's part of being in a society, and that's part of what, schools should be able to teach.
yeah.
Um, so hopefully tech winds up offloading some of the other stuff for them so that they're able to do more of that type of work. Because I think it's a good place. They've got the most attention.
It sounds like you and I agree on the fact that it's the just taking away, the just saying this doesn't exist, or like let's ban cell phones in school. That doesn't really solve the problem, which is uh and in some ways it's not a problem. We want our kids to grow up to be better thinkers, to be more critical thinkers, to make choices that feel good and right to them, that express their morals, right, and their values. And just simply taking it away might be a band-aid, right, and not really solve any problem, but like having a conversation. And it would be pretty amazing to have teachers actually talk about this instead of like, oh no, we can't talk about social media because you shouldn't be doing it. it's
Right.
like it's like our parents when we were younger, right? Like sex, you can't talk about sex, and if they don't we
Don't even
don't
think
talk
about
about,
it.
the kids won't do it. It's funny, like, but now I'm thinking about it, it's like we sort of have this attitude about social media, like,
Oh yeah.
just don't talk about it. And it's not something you should be doing, and you're too young, but not real conversations about teaching kids about algorithms. What if kids really knew that if they look up diet on their phone, that might lead down the road to getting, more content that leads to anorexia, or
Right.
bulimia, and things like that. So I'm not sure, like barely adults I meet know that.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. We had a conversation about that too, that people think my news feed looks like your news feed on Facebook or on Instagram. Um, so kids don't really know that. So I'm with you on that camp. I think we need to talk more about it, not less about it, and not just with parents, but with kids too.
Yeah. I think it's really
Yeah,
important to bring them in to the
yeah.
conversation because there's
Which
so
big
much we
take?
just don't know.
Yeah, we don't know. Which big takeaway today?
I think my big takeaway is like, yeah, in anything, right? It's really important to bring all the stakeholders into the conversation. I think when I think about business, I think about how important that is. Um, and to, work to find like actual solutions to problems in a collaborative way. And so I think, as we look, kids, how we relate to our kids shouldn't be different, right? There's a level of being the adult and knowing, thinking we know what's best and stuff, but they're also participants in it. And I think the earlier we bring them in, the more capable they're going to be of doing the critical thinking, of understanding how those processes work, of at least understanding how other people's minds are working.
Hmm.
So that's
Yeah,
my big takeaway is like, make sure I'm looping in all of the stakeholders. How about
yeah.
you?
Yeah, I love that. I love that the collaboration, the thought about the collaboration. I think it's that we can't really keep our heads in the sand any longer around this
Yeah,
topic. I think it feels so important, um, to kids' mental health, especially, and what's happening, and in this comparison culture, and this like nonstop comparison. So like my takeaway is really how important it is, and to not keep our heads in the sand anymore. Like I want to talk more about it. I want to do some more research, and make sure that I'm a voice for people learning more about this.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. Thank you. Good talking to you today.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks so much, Toni. And thanks to all of our listeners. We really appreciate you guys.
Thank you. Yes. Thank you.